I never meant for it to mean anything. At least that's what I kept telling myself as I leaned back in my chair that night, phone in hand, staring at the chat window with the one person who had been part of my life longer than anyone else. My best friend, the girl who knew every version of me, the one who had laughed with me through heartbreaks, stayed up with me through failures, and somehow always felt like home without ever being called that. It was one of those careless late-night moments, where the world feels lighter, where jokes come easier than honesty, and somewhere between teasing her about her terrible taste in movies and arguing over who would die first in a zombie apocalypse, I typed the words I had joked about 100 times before but never actually sent. So, what if I asked you to marry me? I added a laughing emoji, because emojis are shields, because humor is safer than truth, because if you make it a joke, you don't have to face what it would mean if it wasn't. I hit send and tossed the phone aside, heart steady, mind already moving on, until the vibration came almost instantly, sharper this time, louder, like it knew something I didn't, and when I picked it up, expecting a sarcastic reply or some dramatic fake outrage, I saw the words that stopped my breath mid-inhale. I thought you'd never ask me. For a second, I genuinely believed I was misreading it, that my brain was filling in meaning that wasn't there, that maybe she meant it jokingly too. But there was no emoji, no ol, no escape hatch, just those 5 words sitting there like a confession that had been waiting years to be said. My chest tightened, memories flooding in all at once. Every time she had chosen me over someone else, every time she'd gotten quiet when I talked about other girls, every moment that suddenly rearranged itself into something else entirely, and I typed and deleted and typed again, suddenly aware that this wasn't a joke anymore, that I'd accidentally kicked open a door neither of us could pretend we hadn't seen. I asked her if she was serious, my hands shaking now, and when the dots appeared, disappeared, and appeared again, time stretched thin, and when her reply finally came, she said she had been serious for years, that she had fallen in love quietly, patiently, afraid that if she said anything she'd lose the one person she couldn't imagine losing, and as I read her words, my own past rewrote itself in real time, every best friend moment suddenly, glowing with something deeper, something I had been too afraid or too blind to name. That night, sleep never came, and neither did clarity, only the terrifying realization that a joke had uncovered a truth that could either change everything or destroy the safest thing I'd ever had. And if you're feeling that tension right now, that pull in your chest where you don't know which way the story is going to break, make sure you stay with me, because this is where everything starts to unravel. And if you don't want to miss how this turns into something unforgettable, now's the perfect moment to subscribe and stay for what comes next. Chapter 2. The next morning felt unreal, like the world had shifted while I slept and forgot to tell me, and when I finally met her in person, sitting across from me at our usual cafe, the place where we'd shared 1,000 ordinary conversations, nothing felt ordinary anymore, every glance heavier, every silence louder, and when she smiled at me, the same smile I'd seen for years, it hit me harder than any confession ever could, because I realized I had never actually looked at her without the label of best friend blurring my vision. She told me she didn't expect an answer, that she just needed me to know, that whatever I chose she'd respect it, but respect wasn't the problem. Fear was, because choosing her meant risking everything we already were, and not choosing her meant losing something I was only just beginning to understand. I walked her home that day, neither of us touching, both of us aching to, and that night I replayed our entire history like a movie I'd misunderstood the first time, seeing the love hidden in plain sight, and somewhere between regret and realization, it became clear that the real joke wasn't what I had said. It was how long I'd pretended I didn't feel the same. Days passed, then a week, and the distance between us felt heavier than any argument ever had, until one evening I showed up at her door, heart pounding harder than it ever had for anyone, and when she opened it, surprise turning into uncertainty, I said the only honest thing left in me, that I was terrified, that I didn't know how I'd missed it, that I couldn't promise perfection, but I could promise I didn't want a future that didn't include her. And when I asked her if that answer was still available, if she was still waiting, she laughed through tears and said she never stopped. We didn't rush into anything dramatic, no grand gestures, just a quiet understanding that love doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it waits patiently, disguised as friendship, until you're brave enough, or stupid enough, to joke your way into the truth, and if the story made you believe in timing, in hidden love, or in the idea that sometimes the best relationships start where you least expect them. Don't let it end here. Subscribe to the channel because stories like this aren't just about romance. They're about the moments that change us forever, and the next one might hit even closer to home. Loving her was nothing like I imagined it would be, because the hardest part wasn't falling. It was unlearning the habits of years spent pretending we were just friends. And suddenly every small thing carried weight. Every message unanswered for too long sparked doubt. Every laugh with someone else felt louder than it should. And I realized that crossing the line from friendship to love didn't erase the past. It dragged it along with us, ghosts and all. There were days when it felt effortless, when we'd talk for hours and I'd think this was always meant to be. And then there were days when fear crept in quietly, whispering that I was late, that I had made her wait too long, that someone else might have loved her better if I hadn't hesitated. And one night, after a small argument that wasn't really about anything but insecurity, she finally said the thing I'd been afraid to hear. That loving me had been beautiful but also exhausting, because she'd spent years convincing herself not to hope too much. Those words hit harder than anger ever could, because they were true, and for the first time I had to confront the cost of my silence. The fact that while I was joking and drifting and taking comfort in her presence, she had been choosing me every day without knowing if I'd ever choose her back. I didn't defend myself because there was nothing to defend, only something to fix, and I told her I was done being halfway, done being scared of losing something that I was already risking by standing still, and that if loving her meant proving it again and again, I was ready, even if it took years. And as I said it, I knew this was the real turning point. Not the joke, not the confession, but the moment where love stopped being a feeling and became a decision. And if you've ever wondered whether love can survive doubt, distance, and delayed courage, stay with this story, because what comes next is where everything is tested, and subscribing now means you won't miss the moment where it all almost falls apart. The proposal wasn't planned the way people expect proposals to be. No crowd. No ring hidden in food. No perfect sunset. Just a quiet evening months later when life had settled into something real and fragile and honest. When we were sitting on the floor of our apartment surrounded by unpacked boxes, laughing about how nothing ever turns out the way you imagine. And I remembered that night. The joke, the message, the words that changed everything. And I asked her if she remembered what she said. And when she smiled and nodded, I told her I wanted to ask properly this time. Not as a joke, not as a test, but as a promise that I would never again hide behind humor when something mattered this much. When I asked her to marry me, her answer came without hesitation. Not because it was easy, but because we had already chosen each other in 100 quieter ways, through fear, through honesty, through staying when leaving would have been simpler. And as she said yes, I understood that the strongest love stories aren't the loudest ones. They're the ones that grow slowly, painfully, beautifully, right under your nose. And if you're listening to this thinking about the person who's been there all along, the one you might be taking for granted, maybe this is your sign to stop waiting for the perfect moment, because sometimes all it takes is one question. Ask sincerely to change your entire life. And if stories like this make you believe in second chances, hidden love, and the courage it takes to finally speak, make sure you subscribe to the channel because the next story might feel uncomfortably familiar. And those are always the ones worth hearing.